Hello and welcome. I'm Coach Pepper Joy. As you can tell, Coach PJ is not joining us tonight. Yes, Coach PJ will not be joining us tonight. I'm Coach Joy with the Inside Out Experience. We are talking tonight about the autonomic nervous system, and I'm going to talk to you about what is the soul nerve. Real quick, before I get too deep into it, I do have a couple dogs in the room, so they'll probably try to talk throughout this. So sorry about that. Also, sidebar, no tornadoes were harmed in the making of this hairdo today. I walked my dogs, and so this wind in Oklahoma is not a joke, as you can see. All right, so let's get into it a little bit. You can see these charts behind me, and they are, the top one really is a good example of the autonomic nervous system, and the bottom chart here is actually your circulation system, but I liken it to the autonomic nervous system because they kind of work in similar fashion. Similar fashion being the way the nerves run. Okay, so here I have a chart. I'm going to geek out. This is going to be class tonight. This is what you guys get when Coach PJ is down. You can send him all the good vibes. He's doing fine. He had a oral procedure done on his teeth earlier this week and is still in recovery. He's doing well. He's eating all that, but he's just not going to be able to join us tonight, at least unless he's as an audience member. Which, if you are, hi babe. Okay, so the autonomic nervous system. So there's the central nervous system, which is going to pretty much be right here in the brain area. And I want to, hopefully I can pull up this chart later, but I want to talk about, you can kind of see in this picture in particular, all these yellow lines, okay? These are the nervous system. So you have the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, which is the one that goes both sides of your body. Okay. So why is this important? Why do you need to know about your nervous system? Because your nervous system is what regulates your trauma responses, and it is also what you tap into to heal from trauma after the fact. And I'm going to show you about that now. So I'm pulling out my book, and I'm going to actually read a bit from my book tonight. We are in chapter 2, the theories, and we are on the Polyvagal Theory. So Polyvagal Theory and understanding the whole autonomic nervous system. I have my nice little chart here, which kind of gives you an idea of the nervous system. So where these arrows lie is where that particular nervous system works. So you can see there's 4 different kinds, okay? So we have the sympathetic nervous system, the ventral nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and the dorsal, okay? And dorsal, when you think about dorsal, that's going to be more, I think, of Eeyore. So Eeyore has a dorsal stripe down his back, and when you think of the more fawn, or feign, that flop, those responses of trauma, those are going to land more in this dorsal section down here, okay? So this section will aid in gaining language and framework for where the restorative response system theory, which is our theory here at the Inside Out Experience, is headed and founded on. It is important to remember that when it comes to healing, true holistic healing, I believe that it is genetically encoded within each of us and is passed down from our ancestors. What once poisoned our lineage can be transformed to heal our families and communities to create a real generational wealth and thriving. All right, so the first one we're talking about is the vagus nerve. So on this chart, this arrow right here is going to be where the vagus or ventral vagal system starts. So as the vagus nerve is the physical, psychological nerve, it helps us gain a foundation of perspective into the realm of the somatic, which remember, soma means body, and the connection between our body, our mind, and our soul. So polyvagal theory, poly means many, vagal means wanderer. So this nerve, all your nerves, they wander throughout the body, okay? This theory was first introduced in the 90s by Jeff Porges. The vagus nerve is considered your emotional regulatory nerve. It is the social connection nerve and the fear response signaler. It is the empathic nerve, the intuition nerve, and the spirit guide, all wrapped up in one, in many. The many become one in your nervous system. All right. Let's skip ahead a little bit here. So when you think about the nervous system, think about when you get stressed and you think about how you get an upset stomach. Stomach ulcers, those are one of many illnesses diagnosed as a manifestation of stress in the body, okay? So when you think about health concerns, physical manifestations, headaches, tension is one of the responses that our body goes into when we're kind of stuck in a high freeze, all right? And that can sometimes get translated into a headache. That is something that your nervous system is regulating and saying, hey, we're hurting. There's a lot of tension going on here. And it's a way of letting you know there's tension in your life and you need to relieve it. The vagus nerve connects the brain's thalamus and amygdala. The communication, response, reaction, it all comes through the sensory feedback from the vagus nerve. So it isn't just a nerve that goes out and grabs signals. It also does the signaling. And what I mean by that is that whenever you touch something with your fingertips, okay, just doing this, ask yourself in this moment, how does my index finger feel in doing this sensation? And then ask yourself, how does your thumb feel? They're different, right? They both have they're having the same experience, but it's from different perspectives, just between your fingers there, okay? And so that's kind of what this is saying, is that this nerve, it's connecting, it's a wanderer, so it's in both of my fingers and it feels them, it's signaling them, hey, there's pressure here. And it's also saying, that's familiar. That's my body. Check it out. We're connected. All right. The amygdala. I love the amygdala. I love the amygdala. The amygdala plays a key role in storing all of the sensory input during traumatic experiences. So the amygdala, I also liken the amygdala to one of the chakras. Not the crown chakra, but it is one of the chakras, and it sets more in here. You'll see it in images when you look at the chakra alignment. There's like one here, the third eye, and then one in the throat, and then on down, okay? But realistically, that chakra actually sits back here. So there's one that's supposed to go up here that actually it sits back here, which in the most internal point of your face and your brain, right there, if you were to kind of cut it in fourths, you would see right there is where your amygdala meets with the brain and your nervous system. And I have an image. Okay, kids, getting excited. Which image? I have this image. Okay. Right in here is where everything connects. So your nervous system is going to run down through here, right? We're not going to talk about the cerebellum. We talk about the thalamus. So the thalamus is actually what's talking to your amygdala. And your amygdala is like, if we were to slice it, you'd see it way down in there. I don't know if it's going to show me it here. It doesn't show me it here, unfortunately. I'm going to have to get a better, thing. But the thalamus is kind of like where that's going to sit. But it's all going to meet right in here. Okay. So, the amygdala plays a key role in storing all of the sensory input during traumatic experiences. It does not understand or define these imprinted sensory episodes with time. This is why, when recalling traumatic events, survivors can feel literally the pain from the trauma as though it were happening in that moment. It comes from their sensory recall, as the amygdala is signaling the nervous system to experience the episode all over again, as if it were happening at present time. Now, imagine something as simple as falling and scraping your knee. And imagine after your knee has healed and maybe there's a scar and you're sitting with it and you're recalling the story of, oh yeah, it burned so bad. I remember it burned so bad. When you're thinking about that sensation of, oh, when they put that Bactine or whatever the medicine was they put on and it burned so bad, you can almost feel that sting in that scar. And that is because your amygdala is signaling to the body, we're back there in that moment. Feel it. Express it. Okay? Fun fact, the amygdala is shaped like an almond, and almond blossoms are usually the earliest spring bloom. They represent watchfulness and anticipation, much like how our amygdala functions with our sensory system in activated states. All right, so you know I pointed out the thalamus earlier. I'm going to point it out to you again. Okay, you see thalamus right here, this bad boy right here. We're going to talk about him now. Okay, the thalamus plays a major role in human physiology and survival. The thalamus is composed of different nuclei that each serve a unique role, ranging from relaying sensory and motor signals as well as regulation of consciousness and alertness. It relays messages between the brainstem and the cerebral cortex of the brain. Consciousness versus subconsciousness is split right here between the thalamus and the amygdala. This is the home base of our autonomic nervous system, where the reptilian brain meets the higher consciousness. And yes, I'm bouncing because I'm a little excited, because I just know in my guts that when you guys start understanding your nervous system, and when you're out of your window of capacity, or whenever you are in a trauma response, that as you understand how this works in your nervous system, you'll be able to resource yourself back to a regulated state, and also a restorative one, which is where the theory REST, restorative response system theory, comes from. Okay, so, and literally my next sentence, this is where rest can be conditioned and given to the service of thriving. So your autonomic nervous system, the reptilian brain, the lower of the three brains, that brain is the one that is in service to survival. It's going to help this physical body know what to do when trauma is happening. It's going to tell this physical body, we're running, we're fighting, we are freezing, or we are flopping, we're fawning. We're just going to figure a way out, okay? That's what that brain does. So it's a valuable brain. It keeps you alive. But it's also going to serve to keep you stuck in survival. And humanity has evolved. We're evolved beings. We don't just need survival skills. We need skills for thriving. And that is where rest comes into play. Okay. I think of the vagus nerve as a part. So we've talked about parts work in the past, and we'll get into parts work in internal family systems again at another time. But for the purposes of this example, understand that parts are a mechanism, neither good or bad, used to connect where there is disconnect. So remember, we define trauma as anywhere there is a disconnect, okay? So the purposes of this are to help us understand that when a disconnect happens, when one becomes split, it is now two parts. So there's the authentic self, and then there is the self, the me that had to come about to survive circumstances, and that split me. And so now I have this part. And later on down the road, I have a different experience with trauma or life, and I've created another part. Or maybe I took a job and I have a customer service voice now. Another part, okay? So, in this case, the disconnect is between the physical 3D, third dimensional Earth, and that operates by universal law and is governed by man-made constructs, such as time. Your amygdala is not, nobody gave your amygdala the news that we operate on time. The amygdala doesn't believe in that. It literally has its own way of processing, okay? These things meet in your body through your thalamus in conjunction with your amygdala and the whole of your autonomic nervous system. I am more than just hinting at the fact that your existence is a phenomenal imprint of pure love in the universe. Your vagus nerve is like a physical interpreter for your spirit. It is the soul nerve. Your vagus nerve is your soul nerve. And as you think and as you feel and as you embody and as you express, that's how you are, because your nervous system knows nothing else. And that's why it's important to recognize your narrative. What narrative are you giving yourself on the inside? Because if it's unkind, you're going to eventually physically be unkind. And if it's illness, if you're speaking illness or you believe in illness, it's going to show up in your body. And that's not to say you can't get sick just because you don't believe in things. It is to say that your ability to heal when those things show up is greatly affected by what your mind is saying in the present moment. Not what you've said in the past all the time, but the present moment, because that will override what the amygdala has imprinted from the past. All right. So your vagus nerve is like a physical interpreter. It is the soul nerve. I would like to state that I believe the restorative responses that I speak to in my theory come from the higher consciousness in the brain. So let's think about ways the vagus nerve speaks. The vagus nerve tells your throat there is a lump-like sensation. Have you ever been in that situation where you want to cry but you can't, but you feel that lump in your throat? That's your vagus nerve. It tells your digestive system to evacuate when you're anxious, and it signals your skin to feel goosebumps when you're cold, and it can influence your heart to speed up or slow down. So when you think of a panic attack, nothing otherwise seems to be going on, and yet your body is suddenly receiving signals of flight. And so then your heart rate speeds up and your breathing shifts and your body starts tensing up, because it is telling you we've been triggered to survival, so now we panic. And we call them panic attacks. The vagus nerve is the vibe sensation you experience when you meet someone and have instant chemistry. I'm smiling because I remember meeting Coach PJ and that vibe sensation. We'll speak about vibes in our chapter on shame. The vagus nerve is the most central communication system in the body. It does the most talking and is often the least understood system in the body. Because to understand the autonomic nervous system fully is to hold space for the possibility of spirit and or soul connection. The vagus nerve is the transformation processor of thought into physical manifestation. It operates on a subconscious level. Here is the breakdown of what it looks like. Okay, so again, with one of my adorable charts here. In this one, I used the brain and the spinal column. In the previous one, I used a body, and I used the body with the circulatory system to kind of show you the nerves and how they run through the body, wandering through the body. But realistically, when you think about the spine, that's where the majority, your backbone is the backbone of your nerves, right? So the sympathetic nervous system tends to run shoulders on up. That's kind of where you're going to feel that sympathetic nerve. The ventral nerve is going to be about the same space, just a little bit lower. I think that the ventral nerve tends to hit just under the heart, so from the heart up. And then the parasympathetic nerve, it's also going to meet around the heart and then all the way down your body. And the dorsal nervous system, that's also, so I'm talking about these four parts. This is Polyvagal Theory. So poly meaning many, and vagal wanderer. So we have many, it's four nervous systems. but they wander everywhere, and they will wander together places. And I want to also mention that just because you might find yourself, say you're in a freeze, like I am right now with my brain. Say you're in a freeze response, and you find yourself, and you know for a fact it's a dorsal freeze. So there's two kinds of freeze, but for the purposes of this, we're going to talk about the dorsal freeze. The dorsal freeze is like where your feet feel like concrete. You can't move. You're stuck. And I talk about that one because that's where you're going to feel it in your body. You're going to just like all your center of gravity, you're centered to the point you're stuck and you can't move. Okay? And just because that's happening does not mean you can't also then shift into the ventral. Okay, this is not just like, oh, this one's running, or this one, or this one, or this one. These run all together in conjunction with each other. So you can literally be having a hyperfreeze response as well as a hypofreeze response. So that looks like, have you ever seen a child who's so upset emotionally and they're going this, okay, that breath, that doing that is a hyperfreeze. It's also a type of fawning. They're trying to cry. They're trying to release this energy, right? But they're in a hyperfreeze. They're stuck and they can't get out of it because their body is trying to say, run or fight. But they hit a hyperfreeze before they could respond in any other way. And so they're just stuck in this, and it's going to take an act of an adult or caregiver to pull them out of that space and help get them back to a regulated space. So when you see that response, and I want people to not fear trauma responses, okay? They are perfectly normal reactions to abnormal situations, and they are always in service to survival. So when you find yourself in a space of having or being in a trauma response, it's just information for you to know and remind yourself, I am or I'm not, and if I am, act accordingly, and if I'm not, it's okay to have other people help me get out of this state. Our goal at the Inside Out experience is to teach you how to resource yourself so that if you find yourself in such a situation, you can help regulate yourself out of it, okay? So that's a picture of how it all kind of looks, how it lines up according to, the spine and the brainstem, okay? So the nervous system runs much like the circulatory system, with receptors and veins, nerves throughout your soma, your body. Its major sensory interpreters are centralized along the spine. From there, it is layered in 4 different sections. Each arrow represents a subsystem. There we go. Okay, each arrow represents a subsystem or quad of the autonomic nervous system. These quads work in congruence in service to survival or restoration. We will offer more context on this in our section on the window of capacity, okay? So now we're going to dissect it into 3 sections horizontally. And it matters that we have an idea of the different nervous systems and how they work in congruence with the rest of the autonomic nervous system. How trauma responses are triggered and processed in the body and brain will give us clues to the healing path in the restorative response system theory. So the first one we're going to talk about is that ventral vagal complex, ventral nerve. The initial section is from the top of the head, and I showed you that earlier, right? It's from the top of the head to the bottom of the neck or above the collarbone. And this space is called the ventral vagal complex, all right? Motion, emotion, and communication are regulated and signaled through this section. Okay, so let me say that again. When it comes to the head, the brain, motion, emotion, and communication are regulated and signaled through the ventral vagal complex. It is our dominant social engagement system. And also note that the right hemisphere of the brain, the creative side, is more heavily involved in these functions. The ventral space is the literal headspace of your autonomic nervous system. All right. Next is the sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is the secondary section from your collarbone to about your belly button. This houses your sympathetic nervous system. Mobility, flight, fight, or aggression, and defense are the functions of these responses. And it's interesting because the section with which your sympathetic nervous system lies also tends to be where men carry their balance. So for women, we carry our center of gravity in our hips, and for men, it's in their chest area more. It's that midsection, and that is where masculine energy tends to be more in the fight or flight space. So just something to know. Dorsal vagal complex. This section of your spinal column, the lower third, so remember dorsal stripe down the back like Eeyore. Eeyore tends to reside in a dorsal head space. He's more, okay, I'm here. He just kind of, that's his state, okay? So when you think of dorsal, you can think of a donkey, you can think of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. This section of our spinal column, the lower third from about your belly button to the tip of your tailbone or the base of your sacral chakra, is the immobilization system for conservation and withdrawal. This is our passive defensive system. So remember how I just told you women tend to carry their center of gravity in their hips and in that mid belly area? We tend to be more passive defensive. And that is going to be more of that freezing and fawning space, where masculine energy tends to be more of that fight or flight and up in the chest, okay? Parasympathetic nervous system. On the balancing end of the sympathetic nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system. And it is your subconscious body function system. It tells your body to rest. It aids in proper digestion and the breakdown of nutrition. It responds to and affects these six areas being sexual arousal, salivation, lacrimation, tears, urination, digestion, defecation. And an interesting exercise that I have had clients get involved with a couple of times, especially recently, is when they tend to have issues like Crohn's disease or stomach ulcers, we have a somatic exercise where I teach them to literally enjoy going. And they sit on the toilet and they relax. They do breath work and they fully relax and they let their body process out. They let the parasympathetic nervous system process out what no longer serves them. And they just relax into it versus like, I've got to go. We're very much in a state in the world where it's like, go pee, go to the bathroom, and it's this go, go, go. And there's not a lot of joy. There's not a lot of relaxation. There's not a lot of, it's like, get in here and get this done and go. That's not healthy. And it short circuits your parasympathetic nervous system. So if you find yourself having issues with digestion and you've tried things like meditation and dietary changes, those are wonderful. Always consult your doctor first, but it also doesn't hurt to add a somatic exercise that allows you to enjoy letting your body do what it is built to do. It's built to do those things. Okay. So final note here, let us allow curiosity around what and how the vagus nerve might operate in a will to thrive beyond this will to survive situation, okay? If we could signal the subconscious nerve that we are not experiencing present moment threat and or tapping into seizing its power for thrival versus survival, how much more effective could this law of attraction nervous system be? And I say law of attraction, and I understand that some find law of attraction to be a bit privileged, and I can appreciate why. But when we think about how we treat ourselves on the inside when we don't have to survive, like my parts should not have to live in survival within myself. My external self, this 3D self, might have to live in survival in this world from time to time. But my parts should be allowed to live in thriving within me. Because if I'm thriving inside, I'm going to attract others who are thriving on the inside. And this is how we live our best life from the inside out. That's literally how you do it. Okay, if one can have strong emotional reactions to danger in order to better survive, what then if those reactions were leaned into and created an experience of and for thriving? So that is all I'm going to share from the book today, and I wanted to go over that with you guys on the autonomic nervous system. This live isn't going to be as long as usual, but I am going to hop on here real quick and see, do we have any questions, comments, heckling? No heckling. Don't do that. That's not very kind. And I wanted to go here we go. With you guys on the Nope. All right. So when we talk about the autonomic nervous system and we talk about healing our autonomic nervous system, I want to take a step back and think about in life that sometimes people have surgery and they experience nerve damage. And trauma can feel like that to your nervous system. Trauma can feel like something has gone into your body or gone on with your body and created that disconnect, and there's now nerve damage. And sometimes nerve damage looks like an overactive nerve, where sometimes you'll have a nerve that is creating a vibration or a quiver in your body, and it's saying, I'm healing, I'm activated. Sometimes it's saying I'm overactivated. When you think about being overdone with sensory input, you know, I'm classically one of those people that has to turn my radio down just to see where the map is telling me to go. It doesn't really make sense otherwise, except that by reducing the sensory input of sound from the music that I'm listening to, I can hyper-focus the rest of my senses on where I'm going. And that's really what is going on in that moment. And I'm not the only one who does it, so that's one of the reasons why I share that, because I know that about people. All right, so, oh, hi Coach PJ, he says great. Okay, oh good, I'm so glad. I didn't want to do this without his permission, but Coach PJ has given me the green light to tell you a little bit about the healing journey from just this week. So I won't give too many details because it really is his story, and I think he definitely needs to be the one to tell it. But I did mention earlier he's not with us because he went through an oral surgery earlier this week, twice actually, last Friday and then again on Monday. And if you have fears around the dentist, I highly encourage you to contact us before your next dental appointment, because we practiced and learned a bit about somatic exercises and breath work that do help for that kind of anxiety. But also understand this, you know, dental care and the medications that they use sometimes, they often leave people feeling emotional after the fact. And we brush it off and we consider it silly. And the truth of the matter is that drugs that get used in that space, medications that get used in that space for the purposes of numbing, for the purposes of disassociating your body from the procedure that's being done, when you come back to yourself, it can be a real jarring and rigid experience to come back into your body after something like that. But then you add to it the possibility and likelihood of generational elements. And in particular for Coach PJ, I don't have to tell you guys that being a Black American and thinking back to what they did to slaves with their teeth, and how that's likely carried down in his lineage and part of his experience when he goes to a dentist or orthodontist. And when you think too about that jarring sensation of coming back into the body suddenly, and you carry with you all the generational things, and then your own experience, and then the removal of teeth. He did have some teeth removed, and the removal of teeth, the removal of body parts that no longer serve you, doesn't happen without some form of a mourning process. And so Coach PJ went through that this week. He completely got a front row seat, an experience with healing trauma that intersects with his experience, the loss of body parts that no longer serve him, as well as that generational piece. And we had a decent staff at this place. I knew he was safe. I got to be in the room with him the whole time, and I just let him know that, like, I'm with you. I'm here, and I'm gonna tell this one part of his story, and then I will leave the rest for him to share later. But this one part of his story that I'll share is, at one point they had him laying down, and the doctor was going in, and she hit a nerve or something, and created great discomfort. And I saw him kind of wiggling his legs a little bit, and he was doing this exercise, by the way. He was doing that. We've talked before about how this can be a comforting attachment exercise to squeeze your thumbs like this, or to squeeze them like this. Okay, so he was going back and forth doing this throughout his procedure. And then at one point I noticed some movement in his feet, and in particular in his ankles. And so I just very gently went over and I put my hand on his ankle, and I just sat there. And you can call it praying, you can call it meditation, you can call it Reiki, you can call it energy work, but I was summoning my own ancestral history into that moment, to heal damage, to repair, to restore, and to help him regulate. And it was fascinating how he went from unsettled to this space of, he wasn't comfortable, and he wasn't, I wouldn't say peaceful, but he was grounded, and he was supported, and someone who he deeply loves is holding space for the trauma he's going through, the pain that he's experiencing, the discomfort, and holding space for that, but also brought in the healing, also brought that into that moment. And he recalled it to me later, and it was a beautiful moment that we got to share in our own repair and restore, because, at that point I didn't know, is this really helping you? I know it's not harming you, so I'm going to keep doing it. And he was consenting to it. But it was wonderful after the fact that we got to go through this kind of a healing experience together. And I have to say, from the first time when he had that first initial surgical procedure, and then this second time, I have felt like, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have felt like he has shown much more rapid healing this time around. So yeah, he says dissociation definitely happened for me. I can appreciate why. That's actually, you're on medication that promotes disassociation, but then also, you're hearing metal things clicking, tools are clicking around and clanking around, and that's an automatic disassociation moment for me when I start hearing things like that, like, oh, tools, nope, I'm out. So I can appreciate that was going on. Yes, so Rebecca, get at me with some somatic exercises, because truly, dental care is self-care, and it's scary self-care. Self-care, everyone wants to think about self-care as like, it must feel warm and fuzzy and like I'm gonna want to fall asleep, and that's just not true. Sometimes self-care looks like, going to the dentist. Sometimes self-care looks like going to the doctor. and going through the unfun procedure, you know, be it the breast exam or the colonoscopy or whatever it is that's a part of it, or even just getting your blood drawn. So he says, my physical healing is going faster, but I'm still dealing with a lot of emotions. And you know what? That's beautiful, because our physical bodies are going to heal. Time be damned. But our emotional state isn't confined to time. Okay, we talked about that with our nervous systems. And so the amygdala is going to bring it up, and emotionally things are going to be felt, and it can move into the physical. And I believe that our nervous system brings it back up and allows us to feel it again, to say, hey, this is still a scar. Do you want to heal it yet? And we have this beautiful capacity, no matter how long it's been. No matter how long it's been, to still heal that. And it doesn't matter even if it was passed down generationally. Man, you are healing for the ancestors. You're not just healing you. You are healing your lineage, and you're healing for your lineage that will come behind you after you've gone on. And that is so powerful, but it's very emotional. It's very emotional. So we're going to keep holding space for all of those emotions and working through the breath work and, you know, really sitting with letting things land. Sometimes you have to just sit in the emotions and see where they land in your body. Maybe, you know, it's possible that, you know, there's a trauma your face experienced at some point and you're feeling some of that too. There's a lot of potential intersecting elements into dental work and the healing of it. So I'm not going to keep going on tonight. I definitely feel like I got to geek out on the autonomic nervous system, the soul nerve, and I appreciate getting to share that with everybody. And I really appreciate Coach PJ letting us share a little bit about what his autonomic nervous system was going through with the dentist this week. And I'm hoping next week he'll feel good enough that he can join us and share his experience a bit more. So with that, thank everyone for coming, spending time with us, letting me share and geek out. I appreciate it. I hope you learned something. Make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and go live your best life from the inside out.